Hey everybody, Ian here. So happy February 12th, happy Friday. Welcome to day 12 of the romcom venture that I'm I guess currently in the middle of. Before I get really started, before I get any farther into the video, don't forget to like and share this video and subscribe to my channel. Those are all very helpful to me if you haven't done those things already, obviously. But so anyway, let's get to the movie and the review. The movie I watched today was Sleepless in Seattle from 1993. This is starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan. I'm actually wearing like a Toronto shirt, and this is the CN Tower, but I felt like it looked enough like the Space Needle that it would be fine to like the casual observer. Although now I've ruined it by saying that it's not that. There's also a little. It's cool. You can't see the bottom part of it, but it's like a little medical like heart line sort of thing, and then it beeps up into this CN Tower, and then it keeps going. Anyway, the basic plot of this movie is that it opens on the funeral of Tom Hanks's wife, his former wife, I guess. He and this lady had been married, and they had like an 8-year-old son. And it opens on her funeral. And then soon thereafter, Tom Hanks and his son move from Chicago to Seattle just to kind of start fresh. And then it cuts to like 18 months later. Tom Hanks has been super depressed lately. And so his son calls into this like radio kind of therapist talk show and just says, my dad's been super depressed. What should I do? And against the kid's desires, the therapist has him put Tom Hanks on the phone, and he explains, what's happening and that he's been so depressed since his wife died. And he just talks all about how much he loved his wife and why he loved his wife. And during this talk show, this kind of went viral for the the early 90s, and thousands of women across America all fell in love with Tom Hanks's character after hearing his very emotional and heartfelt answers to these questions. And one of these many women was Meg Ryan's character, who had just gotten engaged to this total, oh my gosh, there was nothing like, he was totally nice, but he was just this complete like dweeby snooze fest of a boyfriend. And she's torn and deciding, who do I love, this guy that I'm not excited by but I know, or am I in love with this guy who's I just heard his voice on the radio. But anyway, my overall feeling on it is that it was cute. It was sweet. I can see why this was became a kind of a rom-com classic, but it felt kind of slow at times and kind of similar to Jerry Maguire, which I watched yesterday. I just found it hard to stay engaged some of the times. And I felt like they could have cut out about 25 minutes of stuff. And I don't think there were any entire scenes that they should have like done away with. It just felt like sometimes there would be a scene that we would learn some stuff in one scene and then some stuff in another scene, and it felt like we could have learned both of those things in one scene rather than half of them in one and half of them in the other. And it felt like it just maybe needed a little bit more refinement, I guess, kind of. And I guess that leads into the writing. I thought it was kind of, there were places when I felt like it was kind of flat and kind of weak, but then other times it would really get into the groove of the writing, especially the groove of the dialogue, and it would start being very quick and witty. But it felt like it needed to be kind of beefed up around the edges, if that makes sense. And I was looking up the movie afterwards, and I found out that it got an Oscar nomination for like Best Original Screenplay for like Nora Ephron, who wrote it. And I've heard of her. I'm familiar with her. But I think she wrote what was it called? I already forgot. The Jack Nicholson and Diane Keaton movie that I keep wanting to say As Good as It Gets, but it's not that. It's oh, now I can't even think. I literally can't even think of the name. But anyway, she wrote that movie, I'm pretty sure. But I was surprised to learn that this movie, that Sleepless in Seattle, got an Oscar nomination for writing, because like I was saying, even from like the opening lines, they were like flat and very one-dimensional, and definitely those types of lines where you're not supposed to say exactly what the audience. I mean exactly what the character is feeling, and they do that. Like literally in the opening scene, like their first 5 lines are that kind of line, and I was like, um, the acting, though, I thought the acting was good. First of all, just kind of in general, I thought Meg Ryan was terrific. I thought she did a really good job. And Tom Hanks was also good. He's a good actor. I think he's a respected actor. But the kid was also very good. Tom Hanks's kid, and those are really the three main characters. There are other appearances by other people, obviously. One of them was like Victor Garber. If you've seen Titanic, he was, I want to say his name was Mr. Andrews in Titanic. He was the guy that was nice to Rose on the boat. And that guy who, he was Rob Reiner. I was going to say he's the director of When Harry Met Sally, but I can't remember his name. Rob Reiner. And several other just people that I recognized in this. But yeah, Meg Ryan, Tom Hanks, and that kid were the three main characters. And the kid was good. The kid was surprisingly good, actually. He was very funny. And I've been generally, for the most part, I've been impressed with the quality of kid actors that I've seen so far this month. Generally, I feel like when I watch kids in movies, seems unnecessary, I feel like they're usually not very good, and they've just been good. They've been solid and funny. The directing then in this was actually, it was good. It was solid. I felt like it was the best directing I'd seen in the last 5 or 6 movies. This had a lot of those kind of particularly telling shots. There was one that, I mean, even in the opening scene that, yeah, I was saying earlier, it opens on Tom Hanks' wife's funeral. In that scene, they kind of zoom out and they show Tom Hanks and his kid on one side of the coffin and all the other people on the other side. And I felt like that was symbolic of it now being them against the world. You know, not against the world, but them on their own outside of the rest of the world. And so again, right from the beginning, similar to the way that right from the beginning the writing was kind of right from the beginning the directing was solid and thought out, and they had taken time and consideration into making sure that this was an enjoyable movie experience. And like I said, it of the last 4 or 5 or 6 movies I've seen, this had the best directing. The music was cute in it. I enjoyed what I was hearing, and I liked it seemed like this was the original song because they played it in the opening credits and the end credits. But I've mostly found the music to be pretty forgettable. And so actually, when I was looking up the movie after I watched it, I also, similar to the writing, I saw that this movie had been nominated for like best original at the Oscars for like best original. I think it was best original song. I don't think it was a score. But I was like, really? That was kind of. I would need to go back and listen to the song by itself. But again, if it's one of those things that I didn't even walk away from it the first time remembering it in the way that people do with like Titanic. Not that Titanic is particularly good, but people remember the music from that, and I didn't walk away from this remembering any of the music. And so yeah, it was just surprising to see that it had gotten, and I wonder if maybe it got Oscar nominations because it was financially successful. I think it made several $100 million, and in the 90s that's good now, but that was very good in the 90s. As for the vibe, it was just charming. But it was hard to latch on to. It is similar to that, Jerry Maguire. I just found it hard to stay engaged. I found myself drifting off more often than I usually do in movies, which I always do in any movies. I get distracted easily, but in this one, it was having trouble keeping my attention in a way that like 13 going on 30 did not. And so maybe it's like a mid-90s movie thing. I don't know if that's... And I'm only saying that just because Jerry Maguire was made, I think, in 96, and this was made in, like, 93. I don't think that's really anything to do with it, but maybe. I don't know. But so anyway, my favorite character was probably the kid. He's actually the reason that all of this happens. He's the driving force of the plot. I mean, Meg Ryan wouldn't have even heard, Tom Hanks involved in love with him over the radio had it not been for the kid calling in. But there's also several other times when the kid is right and the kid is making all the right calls and decisions, and the rest in all the grown-ups are just kind of stupid around him. And mainly Tom Hanks, because he's pretty much the only grown-up around the kid. I also liked Rosie O'Donnell. She was in this movie. She's a friend of Meg Ryan's, and she was just good. She was funny and just a good, sassy friend who was not very. They didn't really delve very far into her character, because her character is not the point of the movie. But I always enjoyed her when she was on screen. And I remembered reading her name in the opening credits, Rosie O'Donnell. But I'd kind of forgotten about it. And then when her character was talking for the first time, I was like, I know that voice. And I didn't quite recognize her face. She was very young. But after like a line or two, I was like, that's Rosie O'Donnell. I forgot she's in this movie. That's totally Rosie O'Donnell. And my favorite scene was actually there towards the beginning. It was the scene where Tom Hanks is talking to whatever the therapist is on the radio, explaining all the reasons why he loved his wife and saying, it was just a million little things that just made me fall in love with her. I can understand why women across the country all fell in love with Tom Hanks' character because of that, because it was actually really sweet. It was very thoughtfelt. It wasn't just like, oh, I liked that she was nice and she was pretty and she made me sandwiches. It was very, it felt like a real declaration of love. And there were several other scenes that I enjoyed. I liked the ending scene, and I can't say what happened in that, obviously, but that was nice. A lot of these movies are pretty predictable. It's fun getting there most of the time, but they're pretty. There have been very few times that I've been like, oh, at the ending. But yeah, this was solid. This was good. It was cute. Even if it was just kind of hard to keep me engaged. And by the end of it, I was ready for it to be over. I'm glad I was never taken on like a date to go see this movie, because I feel like I would have been like, eh. But it was good. It was solid. My little ratings breakdown. As for the writing, I gave it a 1.3 out of 2. Like I said, I really was surprised to see that this got an Oscar nomination for like best screenplay, because it wasn't bad anywhere, but it felt almost like a rough draft. It felt like they needed. That's actually a good way of. It felt like a rough draft. It felt like they needed to cut some scenes down and expand on some lines and just kind of refine it. I gave the acting a 1.7 out of 2. This had 3 very good leads: Tom Hanks, Meg Ryan, and the kid. It didn't look like the kid had gotten much recognition from this movie, and I actually recognized him. His name was Ross Malinger. I recognized him all through the movie, but I was looking at his like IMDb page after the movie, and he hadn't been in anything else that I've seen. So I don't know where I know him from, but I recognize his face all through the movie. But yeah, the 3 of them were good actors. The directing, I gave this a 1.7 out of 2. I think that's the highest I've given the directing in the past like 5 or 6 or 7 days. This was solid directing. This was thought out directing. The music, I gave a 1.4 out of 2. It was solid and it was cute. I don't know if solid is even the right word, because I was going to say it's cute and forgettable. And I don't know if solid is forgettable music. I don't know if those can go hand in hand. Although at the same time, I don't know that they would necessarily be mutually exclusive. And I gave the vibe a 1.2 out of 2. That's a little higher than yesterday. I gave Jerry Maguire a 1.0 out of 2. And so I was less unengaged by this movie than I was by Jerry Maguire, but I was not as engaged as I was, just a couple days ago with like 13 Going on 30, or with like Love, Simon. Every time I see kind of a bad movie, or maybe lackluster, I worry that maybe I'm getting like burnt out by the movies. But then I'll see a good one or several good ones in a row, like Love, Simon and 13 Going on 30. And I'm like, oh no, wait, maybe I am getting burnt out. I don't know. It doesn't really feel like it. But the movies are still swaying my judgment. But so anyway, the total. Let me just make sure this is correct. But the total 1.3 plus 1.7 plus 1.7 plus 1.4 plus 1.2. That should be a total of 7.3 out of 10, which is how I feel about this movie. It was fine. It was. I would not protest watching it again, but I don't think I would bring up the option of watching it again. But if I'd already seen it and I was just hanging out with friends and they were like, "Oh, want to watch it?" I'd be like, "Yeah, sure, it's nice." Let me just make sure this is right though. So 10, 17, 21, 23. Okay, yeah, that's 7.3 out of 10. Yeah, anyway, I am going to cut this off now. Let's see. Okay, this is all right. And thank you all very much for watching this. I will see you tomorrow. We're almost halfway through the month. I forget that February is short. But yeah, in just 2 short days, we will be halfway through. But anyway, I will see you tomorrow on February 13th. 13 is my lucky number, when I will be reviewing the Sex and the City movie from 2008. I just finished watching the show Sex and the City, like within the last, within the last like 3 days. So I'm excited to watch the movie. The show's very good. But so anyway, yeah, thank you guys very much for watching, and I hope you all have a lovely rest of your evening. I guess it's 9:15 as I'm finishing this. I guess, even as early as finishing this, it's as late as midnight in places like Toronto and, the East Coast. But anyway, I hope you have a lovely rest of your day/night. Thank you all for watching. Have a good day/night. Bye.